Hi and welcome to Manti's Book Club. Tonight we are starting to read Profession Witch by Olga Gromyko. This is one of the probably first fantasy books that I actually read in my life, and it is important to me. I think it came out when I was in my teens, and at that time there were not books like that, so it became a template for a lot of different kind of quality fantasy books in the future. Yeah, and I'm starting this book club for my friends who do not speak my mother tongue and who I want to share my favorite books with. So let us start. Profession Witch. Stormin School of Sorcerers, Pythia and Herbalists, Faculty of Theoretical and Practical Magic, Department of Magic Practitioners. Part 1. Social Structure, Life and Customs of the Vampire Community. Coursework, 8th year Adept Volha Redne. Scientific Advisor, 1st degree Master Archmage Xan Perlov. 999 year according to Beloria chronology. Starman City. Introduction. Today turned out to be a good day, warm and windless. The second 10 days of the month slowly sipped with the clepsydra of sunny summer, and the voices of finches coming from the roadside bushes rang in my ears. I went through their nesting grounds as if along the border strip. The strip was a road, abandoned, backed by the dusty grass of crooked Bolshak. The finches were indignant at the intrusion of a person on a white horse into their private domain. Their rollicking thrills were replaced by hoarse chirping. The birds fussily fluttered along the branches to storm in the foliage. The multicolored border around the black drying puddles exploded with hundreds of heat-weary moths and spun upwards in a whirlwind of fluttering wings. The reins, wrapped in a loop, hung from the pommel. I swayed in the saddle like a sack of cereal, holding the latter lying on my knees with my left hand and trying to make out the runes jumping before my eyes. Chamomile, my horse, took advantage of my relaxed state, slowing down and slowing down, hoping that I, engrossed in reading, would not notice her maneuver and would let her stop and calmly nibble the grass. "Hey, what are you doing, dear? Come on, move your hooves." The filly snorted in disappointment. Come on, come on." I made myself more comfortable, if it is possible to make yourself more comfortable on that on the torture device that was a bridge saddle on the third day of the journey. Camomile's mane in thin ringlets went down to the pommel, tucked between the pages of a plump letter, which I was supposed to hand over to the Lord of the Geva, and which I had already opened with the help of magic for about 5 minutes ago, without touching the weighty seal on the string. The seal was imprinted with a ring, and the imprint was clearly visible in a scarlet wax. 13 runes and a unicorn intertwined with a dragon in the center. Remorse in no way accompanied my pastime. Firstly, the letter was written by my teacher, so I lost the page. So yeah, he could not tell the Lord of the Geva anything more offensive, or knew that I already knew about myself. On the other hand, what if the teacher wrote this letter in a state of complacency and peace unusual for him? I must live up to my description. And thirdly, Varvara is not the only curious woman on earth, and Cat is not the only curious animal. I tried not to think about punishment that befell the above. So I started reading. Highly respected Lord of the Geva, noble Araktur Torodvist Shonel of the clan, blah blah blah, heraldry, non-biting politeness. I'm skipping it. I'm skipping the page. I'm skipping the second page. The runes are small, tricky, and it's hard to figure them out right away. My teacher's handwriting is the best for secret documents. He should write cheat sheets for exams. When will this introduction end? Yeah, sure, Lord. On the map, this Dagava is the size of a copper coin, but the honors, uh, the honors are enough for a full golden cladding. I wonder if Araktur himself will read it. Unlikely unless he has progressive delusions of grandeur. In this case, shouldn't I, law-abiding resident of a sovereign city of Starmin, the capital of Beloria, the official residence of a highly respected His Highness King Naum, practice my awe impression in advance? After all, I am an insignificant person, unremarkable in anything except for golden brown hair with red streaks and a, bitchy character. The first quality is hereditary, the second is acquired. And my most detailed autobiography, 3 lines with a trinket at the end. An orphan, 18 years ago, had the misfortune of being born into a family of hereditary field workers. Yep, villagers. Somewhere between spring and autumn. So yeah, somewhere between spring and autumn field work. I barely learned to read and write, and 8 years ago ran away to Stormwind and entered the high school of magic. At this moment, my studies in literature, diplomacy, and genealogy were rudely interrupted. Very rudely. I barely had time to catch the sheets that were falling in different directions. Chamomile, like insufferable saboteur, thoughtfully chewed the bridle, rattling the iron, while an unfamiliar and very suspicious type of person of overgrown appearance defiantly shook a homemade crossbow with a dirty, definitely reused arrow in front of the horse's face. So it wasn't clear who he was going to rob, me or the chamomile. I sat up, examining the rusty arrow tip with interest. I do not think this is the best place to trade antiques, I confidentially told the stranger. In Starmin, they would have torn it off your hands. Well, rather, they would cut it off. They don't really like robbers there. Chamomile sniffed the crossbow, snorted contemptuously, and completely ignoring the robber, reached for a delicious green raspberry great. From the high thickets of which this miracle in old shoes has just emerged. This criminal element was noticeably embarrassed, and the arrow tip fluttered like a puppy's tail. Alas, repentance were still far away. The lost ship persisted in the sin of love of money. Come on, quickly, get off your horse, you tongue-tied girl. Yeah? Trick or treat. And quickly, you hear? I pretended to work hard. I pretended to think really hard. Well, you convinced me. Trick. It smelled like ozone. The robber's face twitched. His pupils dilated and his eyes glazed over. And he, slowly lowering the crossbow, untied and, without questions, handed me a skinny bag hanging from his belt. The bag reeked of cat piss and smoke. I loosened the rope that held the neck of it together and let a few small coins slip through my finger. Not a lot, my dear, that's not a lot. You work lazily without a spark. However, let it be so. I'll take it as an advance payment, told I to the robber, throwing an empty bag at his feet, and warned him. I'll go the bag the same way in a couple of days, so be kind. Do not disappoint me. The man, without taking his hypnotized gaze off me, slowly bent down, picked up the bag, and froze like a pillar, unable to move without my command. As soon as would-be robber was out of sight, I deactivated the spell and allowed Chamomile to switch from a gallop to her favorite jog. The latter, pressed between my knees while counting money, became slightly wrinkled and lost its presentation. However, I reasoned the main thing is not the design, but the content, which compensated for the shortcomings of the border cliff used in a secluded place. Finally, a couple lines about me. You could have missed it for the praises of the mysterious Lord Arctur. During her studies at the highest school of sorcerers, Pythias, and herbalists, the adept Olga showed herself, I know, very bad. Restless, impatient, self-willed, familiar song, loves cruel jokes and repeatedly transfers them from pupils to teachers. Is he talking about the bucket or what? Yes, there was one bucket, but quite a big one. It stood on a beam above the door of my room. Kind of homemade trap for the neighbors in the school dorm, so that it would be discouraging for them to borrow my notes and pots of borscht cooked for the week without asking. Maybe the teacher wouldn't have been so angry if the bucket had overturned instead of falling on his head upright, along with the water. Distinguished by rare abilities for practical and theoretical magic, highly developed intuition, she quickly adapts to non-standard situations. Ha! Maybe I'm not hopeless yet. And I recommend using her talent to solve the problem that you mentioned. Yeah, also, the subsequent pages are written in sympathetic ink in order to protect their contents from the immoderate curiosity of the above-mentioned adept, who by now has probably already become familiar with the contents of the previous pages. The components included in the ink are known to you and will not be difficult for you. Yeah, no, hopeless. Only the grave will fix me. Chapter 1st. Materials and methods. The Gaba's border is kind of indecent. Elves have their tall grasses, dwarves have their rocks, Budlaks have the piles of earth thrown to the surface, Dryas have oak trees that sweep the clouds, the druids have their stone circles, people have old peeled walls, channels with musty water, separated with a couple of drawbridges, and bold guards standing near them, vigilantly dozing off, leaning on their rusty halberds. And here, aspens. Some kind of mockery, especially considering that inhabitants of the Geva are vampires. Such nice aspen trees, silvery, trembling. Behind them, a peaked spruce carpet tickled the sky, among which a carpet of pines tickled the sky, among which here and there you can see rare birch while the Geva itself lies in a valley like a bun at the bottom of the painted bowl. If you look from the hill, from edge of the bowl, you can see a wide rim of aspens. The second rim is thicker, darker, made of spruce trees, and in the center a wide green bottom with specks. The Geva itself in a ring of cultivated fields and clouds of fog. Get close to the trees, the teacher instructed me, and send a mental signal deep into the forest. Any signal. You can think about anything, just form a powerful telepathic wave. But who should I send it to? Just a common frequency. One of the border guards will appear. I coughed embarrassedly. It would be better for him to not to hear this. You don't have to think through the next dirty trick. I know, you are overly fond of them, but this time, please, try to refrain from that. What I was talking about. Oh yeah, the wave. Vampires are very susceptible to telepathy, and they will immediately react to its presence, although they will not be able to thoroughly decipher it. So just focus on quantity, not quality. Like this, I looked at the smoking bathhouse, wrinkling my forehead with strain, and 5 or 6 adepts immediately react to my wave, covered in steam, running out of the doors and jumping out of the windows, attacked by suddenly animated brooms. The hands of future colleagues are busy with towels, hiding their most secret things from the brooms. The teacher pacifies the brooms with one movement of his eyebrows, but the look addressed to the Joker by his unwashed colleagues do not promise me anything good. I said think, not broadcast spells. It's a pity that during the years spent within these walls you never learned to think. Well, I am thinking. I am standing under the aspen tree, wrinkling my forehead, and Chamomile is already chewing something, with green saliva oozing from black corners of her velvet lips. To telepathize means to consciously share thoughts with somebody else. I'm sharing the last one. There is a cool air coming from the forest. An oriole sitting on a branch shakes its tail in surprise, responding to my mental efforts. Well, either the task turned out to be too hard for me, or the stunned border guards were caught on the spot and fell struck down by my powerful thoughts. My efforts were crowned with success in about 40 minutes, and during this time I managed to think about more things than in my previous 18 years of my life. Here's the result. Aha, it worked. Or did he pass by chance? It was the first time I saw a vampire. Perhaps if he had appeared out of nowhere and been as pale as death and bared his bloody teeth, I would have been afraid of him, as in fact I had planned. My knowledge in the field of vampire science was based on human legends and traditions, which were clearly very pessimistic. In addition, all engravings, paintings, tapestries, and rock paintings depict vampires exclusively at night and in the dark. Wings, teeth, claws, all this seems so scary and huge only because you cannot really see anything. Daylight dispelled the aura of horror in smithereens. In the sunlight, against the backdrop of endless fields and tall trees, the vampire seemed outrageously small and harmless. Well, I haven't got off my horse yet, but I had to. They gallantly offered me a hand, which, however, I did not risk taking. The vampire smiled, showing his long fangs. Anyone would have smiled seeing how I slid down the steep chamomile side. I threw the reins over the horse's head and stared expectantly at the vampire. The border guard turned out to be maybe half a head taller than me, broad in the shoulders and quite handsome. Long dark hair framed the narrow tanned face. The wings folded behind his back gave the vampire some resemblance to Moroi, the demon, the messenger of death, whose 10-foot statue adorned the assembly hall of the high school. The black, piercing, slightly slanted eyes of the vampire studied my an attractive appearance, but were unable to guess what was hidden behind it. Who are you, and what do you need in the Geva? The vampire asked, impressively, gutturally, and moderately menacingly. Me? I was telepathing so intently that I forgot my prepared answer. Well, not me. The vampire decided to joke. It was like a devil pulled my tongue. Oh, I'm just a young, beautiful, and innocent maiden, wandering alone and sadly in the dark forest, awaiting my terrible fate, I blurted out, taking into account the tastes attributed to vampires, and honestly trying not to laugh into a guardian's face. Needless to say, the answer stencil had nothing to do with my impromptu response. The vampire was dumbfounded and looked more like a girl offended by her fate than I did. What? He asked in surprise. I repeated obediently. A shadow of understanding crossed the guardian's face. Oh, you are Volharedne, an adept of the Starmine School of Sorcerers, he said slowly. Right? It was my turn to be amazed. Where I am now and that's... Follow me. The vampire turned and disappeared into the aspen undergrowth of the edge. What about the horse? Just lead her, came the calm answer. The road is only 10 steps away, and the detour will take about half a mile. Chamomile was not happy about the prospect of getting into the bushes, to put it mildly. I hung from the reins. No effect. The horse danced on the spot occasionally, rearing up and trying to turn around. The tall, dense aspen forest, from her point of view, was a completely unsuitable place for a self-respecting horse. I was already thinking about creating a vision mirage of the road, but during the struggle we pretty much crushed the branches and the horse saw the real road in the depths of the forest. Snorted a few times for the sake of decency. Chamomile calmed down and I pulled her along with me. The thought of whether the Geva's forests were suitable for people had never occurred to me before. With an effort of will, I draw this thought away now. I mean, vampires are vampires. They are not ghouls. They are an intelligent race. We will find a common tongue. The vampire waited patiently, leaning against the aspen trunk like a visual illustration for the tome of human superstition and their causes. Chamomile reacted to him accordingly. That is, not at all. Although she was supposed to snore, beat with her hoof, and squint with bloodshot eyes. However, my horse is extremely phlegmatic. After making sure that the whole group was assembled, the vampire looked away from his favorite tree with obvious regret and led us into the depths of the forest. Now I was looking at his back. The wings put through the slits in the clothes resembled a black cloak worn together with a hanger. At least with it, I associated the thin bones that prevented the leathery bat wings from falling off. The gloomy but majestic forest, covered with a carpet of spruce needles, was no different from dozens and hundreds of other forests I which I drove through, walked through, and even crawled on all fours through in search of berries. In the crowns of the spruce trees, little birds twittered softly, and along the edges of barely noticeable paths, soft light green sorrel curled. The vampire was silent. I was thinking, this time exclusively for myself. Just a week ago, I could not even imagine that I would ever find myself in the Gala and on business at that. I had a year and a half supply of unknown granite of science left before my graduation. Although in some subjects I was significantly ahead not only of fellow adepts but also my mentors. Even the teacher, to be honest, could not always understand the abstractions I had created. The teacher has been teaching practical magic since second year. He is demanding, grumpy, and capricious, like an old maid, like an old maiden. It is extremely difficult to please him, and besides, I hate to please. At one time, I was seriously thinking about whether I should give up all of this crap and transfer maybe to the faculty of witchcraft or herbalists. But I got used to it, lost half of the roughness, and began to pay no more attention to the teacher than to a blackberry lash, which pricks and clings to clothes, but nevertheless brings some benefit. Practical magic is not for girls, male adepts used to say, envying my abilities. They turned out to be right. I'm the only girl in the whole class. The remaining 5 or 6 dropped out after the first semester. Of course, it is more appropriate for a girl to tend to the sick, deliver children, or heal wounds. In short, heal or hide mistakes underground. The master of practical magic awaited by was awaited by tracts with ghouls, grumpy dragons, shy basilisks, and you know, improvement in the environment in general. Well, perhaps I have too little compassion to care about the sick. Ghouls do not seem to ghouls do not seem needing it. 8 years ago, when I touched the bronze plaque on the gate of the school with a mullet, no one believed that I would even become a herbalist, that I would be able to become a herbalist. I was a wild 10-year-old with just the right amount of pimples mixed with freckles, and a lot of talents hidden so deeply that they were not able to reveal them during the interview. Well, no one really tried. The school preferred to enroll city children from wealthy families, more or less educated, well-mannered, and ready to support the school financially if necessary. At the interview, they tried For a long time they tried to explain to me what's the difference between left hand and right hand, which I had to put on a piece of paper and imagine how it was getting charred under the phalanx of the fingers. I also didn't know what phalanx were. In general, the school stood and was going to stand without my participation. I remember I was sitting on the ground by the gate and half swallowing, half smearing large angry tears across my face, but they kept rolling out of my eyes against my will. Luckily for me, or maybe unlucky, the teacher was not on the committee, the interview. He was just returning from a long diplomatic trip, and I was sitting in his way. Is this a proper for a battle wish to cry? He asked sternly, looming over me like a bearded rock with a staff. I noisily wiped my nose. I'm not a witch, and I can cry whenever I want. Look at you, the teacher got surprised and crouched down on the edge of a stone box with flowers. Do you know that when little girls cry so bitterly, the weather turns bad? Oh, look, you're going to bring rain on my grey head. I won't. Yeah? Why is that? Because you are a warlock, and it doesn't drip on you. The teacher either laughed or coughed into his beard. That's why you wanted to become a witch, right? Who? Herbalist? Pythia? No, a real magician. To do terrible magic, and for everyone to be afraid of me. Necromancer? Teacher grinned. What? Well, evil witch, he explained. Are there good witches? I asked after thinking for a moment. Well, they are. They are called magical practitioners or battle mages. Yeah, that suits me. Aren't you afraid of ghouls? No, I'm only afraid of cockroaches. And of rats a little bit, I admitted with a sigh. Here you go. And the battle mage should not be afraid of anything. And you are not afraid of anything at all? The teacher thought for a moment and scratched the top of his head. Well, you see, a mage still has to be afraid of someone. Of themselves. Magic is not a balagan tricks with balls and cards. It can be dark and light, good and evil, destructive and creative. And what it will become in your hands depends only on you. And this is a huge responsibility. Look, the mage said, turning his palm up, and a cloud of blue flame materialized above it. It is a beautiful ball, isn't it? And so harmless in appearance. Look how calmly it lays in my palm. Do you think it will remain as obedient in the wrong hands? I did not like answering provocative questions and without hesitation grabbed the ball with both hands. Wow, it's really cold! I screamed enthusiastically, forgetting about crying. And it moves! The teacher didn't answer immediately. With difficulty getting his slack jaw back up, he asked me in a weak voice to throw this bullshit away somewhere far. I was surprised but obeyed. There was a flash and rumble, and when the smoke cleared, we saw a roof of a distant barn. It hung in the air for some time, then collapsed noisily into the ashes. "What is this? Xander, your stupid experiments again?" thundered behind me. I turned around and saw a short, well-fed and big-eyed magician of indeterminate age with a hooked nose and a brush of red moustache. "Ah, Petrim," the teacher said casually without even turning around. "How did you overlook such a pearl? An amazing gift for energy control, telekinetic abilities, just a born practitioner. I am taking her into my group." Petrim is a headmaster and a head teacher at the same time. He teaches necromancy, but only so far as because the master's degree he has in elemental magic. Petrim's name is long and intricate, like a curled up viper. He called it during the introductory lesson, but so quickly and illegibly that no one even had time to write it down. The adepts respectfully call him the Venerable Master Petrim. The mentors call the same without the venerable, and the teacher even without the master. Behind his back, Petrim was honored as a necrogrant by both adepts and mentors. Petrim looked at me with a contempt. "There is no room," he muttered. "We already have 7 extra applicants. All thanks to you. You pick them up from the street like stray kittens, and then begins all this stupid mess with expulsion, giving birth to dropouts who are dangerous to society." For a second, the air between mages thickened and darkened. Just for a second. "Let's go, girl," said the teacher without lowering his eyes. "You are accepted. From this moment on, you are an adept of the school of sorcerers, Pythias, and herbalists." There had long been rumors around the school that something wrong was going on in the Gala, but no one knew what exactly. Everyone had a guess, and with such a thoughtful look as if they had diplomas with the titles of Pythias of the first degree. All negotiations with the Gala were conducted by the teacher. Master Petrim did not interfere in this, but developed a vigorous activity to control the situation, which means he held 2 or 3 meetings a day, after which the teacher, driven to the white heat, began a lecture on practical magic, with the survey looking more like an assault, mercilessly sending young bolts of reason to the mercilessly setting to the bottom the young buds of reason deprived of the ballast of knowledge. The air was seething with magic. Messages from the Gava were sent telepathically along a chain of mages settled in different cities. And to be honest, where can you find a messenger who would agree to become a messenger with vampires? There's not a single human settlement within a 10-mile radius of the Gava. They're afraid. Of course they are. Vampires, bloodsuckers. Fear and horror. Lock the doors, eat garlic. At the intelligent races lecture courses, vampires were placed between the elves and gnomes in the allies section. Races, unfortunately, were taught by Petrim. He taught tediously, intricately, and from his own point of view. He didn't like elves, was afraid of gnomes, said two unprintable words about trolls, and glorified vampires so much that it was time to sharpen stakes and go to war. Because of this bias, we didn't really know anything about vampires, and in the exam it was enough to blurt out some obscenity about them, and an A was guaranteed. The vast majority of masters and adepts were supporting his point of view, while leashes, mermaids, and even goblins still had defenders. No one dared to praise vampires. And the situation was still heating up. The mentors were walking around as if dumbfounded. Classes were getting disrupted. Adepts took advantage of this and did whatever they wanted. At a herbalist left lecture, a dead mouse mysteriously fell into a vat of potion and, well, it did not come back to life, but the smell of the elixir caused two adepts to faint, and the rest had such headaches that the classes were cancelled until the foreign element has completely evaporated. In the dark corridors of the basement floor, a skeleton appeared. It rattled its bones and was breaking retorts with valuable ingredients, such as concentrated dragon blood, bile of virgins, huge deficit due to an even greater shortage of suppliers, mercury fulminate, and aqua regia. Search and elimination of the skeleton had to be for the search and elimination of the skeleton, the special commission had to be appointed, led by the graduate student Almit, and as a result of this, unfinished retorts were also broken, and the skeleton turned out to be a visual aid from an anatomy class into an empty skull of which someone's playful hand has infused the spirit of a suicidal alchemist. But that's beside the point. The real problems broke out when one of the teachers disappeared. Before the water festival weekend, He, as always, gave us a bunch of spells and exercises for practicing, read out the marks on the grades on the test, and in indisputable tones said goodbye, and we didn't see him again. Vajak, an adept, saw him saddling a brown horse and attaching traveling back to the saddle and galloping off to their own to Bagor. And he's never returned. Bagor laid on the same line as the Geva. School was overwhelmed by a new wave of rumors, even more vague and uncertain. Garlic prices skyrocketed. Swords and chainmail also became more expensive. Starmine was overrun by strange types, gloomy and covered in greasy hair. They occupied inns and taverns, forming gangs that resembled packs of rats. It's like we just didn't have enough mercenaries, grumbled Almit, master of the fourth degree, who temporarily replaced Petrim and was teaching practical classes on intelligent races. He was currently trying to distribute the topics of courseworks among us. They came down like crows on the carrion. I hope we will avoid becoming it. The bastards. One war is not enough for them. Almit was referred to the war with vampires that ended about 70 years ago with the signing of a peace treaty. Well, the treaty still stands, noted Vajek. Yeah, that's why we now have the displeasure of seeing assassins right under the windows of the school. Officially, the king cannot speak out against vampires, since the agreement was signed by all intelligent races, including the most numerous, that is, elves, trolls, and gnomes. The latter, by the way, took over the entire metallurgy and weapons industry, so there is no point in quarreling with them. They will immediately rally against the aggressor and, well, thoroughly kick his, they will give a worthy rebuff. But mercenaries are a completely different matter. They are outside the law, the free hunters. As they say, you cannot keep track of all your subjects. Officially, the king will banish them, but unofficially, what income do you think that shaggy guy with a beard uses to flirt with that free-spirited girl? Amit moved away from the window as set an example for the adepts who were actually clinging to the glass in hope of seeing the mentioned girl. Okay, now it's your turn, Bolha. There are 5 topics left. Life and customs of gnomes, metaphysical views of ghosts, comparative analysis of the psychology of brownies and stable hands, and the role of mermaids in the ecology of fresh bodies of water, and oh no, Petrim crossed it out again. So there are only 4 topics. Why are you grimacing? As usual, I go to complete bullshit. Ghosts are boring and also moralists. After 5 minutes of communicating with them, you begin to feel sleepy. Thundering around in the pond with mermaids is also not a good idea. Leeches, runny nose, and mosquitoes come with the environment. Gnomes are secretive and suspicious creatures. You cannot tear out the coursework material from them with your closing teeth. And the psychologists of brownies and well, stable hands. Well, they are konyoshi. They are kind of like the mavoi. Sorry, sidetracked. Uh, Stable spirits can be expressed in 2 words: petty tricks. Well, just think about it for now and I will explain what is what. The coursework must be completed by the first heather, so in exactly 3 months. It should include a review of literature from the last 2 centuries, preferably literature of the race you have chosen to study. But do not limit yourself to just books. I know you get in the library for a day, copy a couple of dusty tomes, and you think that you got off easy. No, my dears, nothing will work out without direct contact with them. I will quickly figure you out during the oral examination. Yeah, and I specifically appeal to those who chose trolls. Do not quote them, for God's sake. Retell it in your own words. Well, Volga, did you make up your mind? No. A laboratory assistant from the Department of Horrible Science looked into the office, nodded to Amit, and cleared his throat and in an official tone invited me to the headmaster's office. Perhaps it is worth describing it in more detail. Adepts are curious people. Just point them to the forbidden fruit, turn away for a minute, and all that remains of the fruit is a lonely stop. To be honest, I also hung around the office like a fox around a chicken coop. It was sealed with magic as hermetically as a chicken egg with a shell. Adepts did everything they could. They hammered this shell with master keys, with spells, tried to levitate under the windows, sent trained cockroaches on a reconnaissance, but to no result. About this office were created legends. Like, they said that there is a legendary mirror of revelations and a portal to the infinity and a scroll with a spell of the end of the world and a prophesying skull with a philosopher's stone in its teeth. In general, all the miracles and mysteries of the past, future and present. And here I am in the Holy of Holies of Bitrim. And what? I am disappointed to the core. The game wasn't... Sorry, yeah, the game wasn't worth it. The furnishings consisted of a sofa, couple armchairs, table, and a chair, and maybe a little bit of official luxury in the form of two paintings and a lush carpet. One moment. You're right. The teacher sat on the chair, tired as if even aged. In his hands he held a sealed, well, before, scroll. Sit down. Thank you, I'll stand. If the teacher was alone here, I would have sat down, but behind him Master Petrim's eyes sparkled with anger, and sitting in his presence meant signing your own death warrant. He definitely did not hide his contempt for the adepts, and much less encouraged familiarity between them and their mentors. You are going to the Geva, he said. Uh, Bluntly, moving forward. Wait, where? I blurted out. To the Geva, the teacher patiently repeated. When? Right now. From this office, you will go straight out into the courtyard. You will pick up your mare from the stable, receive rations and money from the storekeeper, and leave the school without talking to anyone. But my jacket, bluntly asked I. The jacket was lying on the bed in my room. I was just going to sew back the torn off pocket. The teacher snapped his fingers, and the jacket, warm and soon, fell on me. Such masterly teleportation amazed me. Clutching the jacket to my chest, I silently waited for new instructions. Okay, give this scroll to the Lord of the Geva, Araktur Dor, or someday I will definitely break my tongue. Personally, do not show it to anyone, do not get it out, do not take it out, don't even tell the other vampires about it. My hand started trembling. The scroll soared in the air, fell onto the floor, and rolled under the cabinet. I hastily plopped down on my knees. As luck would have it, the cleaners avoided the headmaster's cabinet, and the damned scroll was tightly wrapped in the shreds of centuries-old dust. I hastily blew on it, but it turned out even worse. All the dust got in my eyes and nose, and a deafening sneeze mixed with the sound of a vase falling from above. After somehow stuffing the dirty scroll into my bosom, I rose from my knees and immediately regretted it. Both masters looked at me more piercingly than basilisks. The left basilisk exuded mortal coldness, the right one even more offensive reproach. Glancing with guilt at the fragments of the vase scattered near the closet, I feigned sincere repentance and concentrated attention, which means I made an extremely stupid grimace. The teacher, with a sign, was content with what he had and began to talk in more detail about the road to the Geva, about energy points, about the most common creatures of this area, but I was listening with half an ear. None of this mattered. But even without distractions, the town will lead you to the Geva. But what is there in the valley itself? You are not listening to me, reproached the teacher. I'm sorry, continue please. You are surprised, aren't you? I let out a nervous laugh. That's putting it mildly. The teacher glanced at his colleague. Master, please. Did the teacher publicly call Petrine master? This is something new. Did this PC warlock get the upper hand in some way? It's been a month since we received the first message from the Geva. The master began, turning away from me and looking out the window. The master's fingers, white, sleek, covered with rings, touched at the tips behind his back. I thought for a moment and sat down. He doesn't like me. From the very day he clashed with the teacher over me. However, Petrine did not like all female adepts, especially practitioners. There were rumors that some sorceress managed to defeat him in a fair fight, making him a laughingstock. Well, technically, not from the Geva, but from Komnidержets, a city on the river Rip. This is the Geva's closest neighbor. The mayor asked to send a magician, but one of the adepts who completed their training was assigned to Komnidержets a year ago, and the city could not praise him enough. That is correct, the governor answered us, but 2 weeks ago the mage disappeared, and the cows were covered in scabs, so they desperately need a new one. I made inquiries, and it turned out that the mage went to the Geva, supposedly on some kind of business. And not just him. Over the past month, the Geva, like a bottomless barrel, has swallowed 4 experienced, powerful and battle-hardened mages, including a teacher in theoretical magic. He had orders to make contact with the residents of the Geva and find out what was ultimately going on there. Can't you ask this Araktur what he's about? The master turned around so abruptly that I hastened to jump up and stand straight. We asked the teacher preventing the explosion, but we received a very vague answer. What did they say? He claims that evil spirits are to blame for everything. Which one specifically? That's the point, the teacher shrugged. All of it. Everything that exists. Ghouls, werewolves, basilisks, chimeras, pestilence, ghosts. In general, he listed the undead encyclopedia from cover to cover. And this is in the Geba, is it Petrim? There has never been anything larger than a leshy. Undead avoid the Geba like the plague. Even they don't like those bastards. He pronounced the word bastards with indescribable disgust. Even his cheek twitched from hatred, and the knuckles of his fingers turned white, almost imitating an act of strangulation. The teacher was much calmer about vampires. That's correct. The Gaba's usual problems are livestock diseases, accidental injuries, and crop failure. By the way, Petrim, you forgot to mention the Lord of the Gaba officially announced the death of his 9 subjects. I do not believe a single word he says, said Petrim. This filthy vampire is squirming like a snake under a spear. In total, together with people, 13 people in 1 month. The teacher continued calmly. And those subjects, were they magicians too? I asked. Vampires do not have magicians, only herbalists. We don't even know whether they give birth to children with magical abilities. Matter of fact, we know practically nothing about vampires. Among the topics of coursework offered to adepts, there is this one, the social structure, life and customs of the vampire community. But over the 150 years of the school's existence, no one dared to develop it, no one dared to research it, so we usually cross it out. Well, I'll work on my coursework at the same time, I try to joke. You are not going to practice. For some reason, Master became enraged, stepping towards me with such fury that I fell into an armchair and he hung over me spitting saliva. You are going on a mission. A serious mission. No delays, no nonsense. Arrived, spoke with the Lord and went back. If you can. Girl, you are still too young and stupid to assess what is happening. Vampires who lived side by side with us for so many years became insolent and they're just killing people in the open. Petrim, there is no proof, the teacher quietly intervened. In the voice of old maid there was uncertainty that I really didn't like. That will be proven when she returns. Or doesn't return. Then at least we will know our enemy by sight. And know that they're the enemy. Until now, the Code of Mages did not allow us to harm vampires and ordered us to protect them from human fanatics. We did not pay any mind to the tales of stupid villagers, although they besieged the guard posts in crowds, begging to be protected from the insidious bloodsuckers. But now everything will change. Vampires will be excluded from the list of allies and equated with other darklings. That's it. The conversation is over. Any questions? Why did you choose me? I'm still an adept. Your teacher's recommendation, Petrim growled, again showing me his well-fed butt. Leave immediately. The adepts were waiting for me under eavesdropping proof door. I easily blocked telepathic bugs, and my colleagues had to satisfy their curiosity by asking questions. There were a lot of them, and getting answers, which I disappointed. How did it go? What did they want? Come on, what were you talking about? I assumed a mournful and mysterious look. A reverent silence fell, as before the body being carried out. When the silence became when the silence started to ring in my ears, I admitted with a sigh. I was offered to replace Petrim as a headmaster, but alas, I was forced to refuse. The vanity of this sinful world is not for me, and therefore I asked permission to retire to a remote monastery where I would spend the rest of my days in prayer and repentance. Goodbye, everyone. We are unlikely to see each other again. The faces of future colleagues stretched like clothes after washing. With a chuckle, I skipped down the stairs, putting on and buttoning my jacket as I went. The horse did not ask any questions. For 2 pieces of sugar, she allowed herself to be dressed in a saddle and, after much persuasion, bridled. For the journey, I was given a bag with clothes, a loaf of bread, bottle of water, with holes, so practically without water, a bag of grain, and for some unknown reason, a sword, dull and wobbly at the hilt. The road lay easily under the horse's hooves and very hard under my pampered butt. The school was left behind, no one saw me off, adepts were called for another lecture. Chamomile entered the light birch grove, and the trees closed behind me, cutting off the path to retreat. Ahead, on the side of the road, stood a motionless man in a loose blue robe, trimmed with gold. On his chest, swaying slightly on a silver chain, a large emerald glowed dimly. I pulled the reins. The teacher came up and touched my knee with his hand. Dry warmth penetrated through the thin pants. I will answer your last question, Wolfgang. You see, there are problems for which brute force is of little use. Nobody argues my soul would be much calmer if you were an excellent warrior and a professional mage. But in our case, this does not matter, and knowledge and experience were of little help for those who died. After all, the scariest and the most insidious monster of all time is rumors. This is the monster that you are destined to fight. I'm sending you as the most unbiased adept. You never listen to your elders, you do not believe gossip and slander. to convince you the truth should be put right under your nose, should let you touch and smell it, and only then you will take it as truth and will never let anyone confuse you. You are not soft clay, you cannot be molded into someone else's image and likeness. And you are not a wax on which other people's words and thoughts can be imprinted. You always have your own opinion. That is what I need. I want to know the truth about what is going on in the Geba, and I want to hear it from you. I'll try, teacher. Well, do not overdo it. And remember, if you do not return, a war will start. Dream on, old man. I will come back. This is the end of the first chapter. I will see you next time. Good night.